be sure to reach out to our guy, Smitty, to get your corner rugs. You can see his corner rugs at the top level tournaments, including Ironman this year. Hit him up at Smitty43952 at Gmail. Go check out our partner, Spider Mat Tape, at spidermattape.com. It's the freshest mat tape in wrestling, manufactured this year and hasn't been sitting around in a warehouse. Once again, it's spidermattape.com. Limited rolls available. Once it's gone, it's gone. All right, joined today by Ross Bendik, Wrestle Chicago. Welcome to the show, Ross.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Yeah, been talking over the last couple of weeks, and it's crazy that I did not know, but you're from Ohio, huh?
I am, Vandalia, Ohio.
And mutual friend / coach, right? Mark Peck was your coach at Butler High School, right?
He was, yeah. Introduced me to the sport.
So do you have any memories of him? We want to give him a shout out. You know, he's been a strong piece of that program, but you have any stories?
I mean, probably the one thing he told me, which I think he denies he said to me, but it's so true about my personality, that he said, you know, before I go on the race, I want to hit you in the face, you know, because when you're angry, you are so much better at wrestling. And I would say that's probably true for anything I do. You know, I'm pretty laid back, but if I, fired up, I tend to perform much better. He knew that for sure.
Awesome. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. What a great guy.
Yeah.
A true example of a coach here in Ohio, right? He goes the extra mile. And then from there you went on, did you go off directly then to Penn State from there? Or?
Yeah. So I went to Penn State, and, I did not have much wrestling success in high school. And in fact, my senior year, I hurt my shoulder during football season and told Coach Peck, didn't want to wrestle. I was tired of being in a sling, tired of her. I wasn't going to wrestle. And I felt guilty about it. So I told him I would write the articles for the local paper, because our local paper didn't cover wrestling. And that's probably where I got my start of realizing I was much more valuable promoting the sport off the mat than I was ever going to be on the mat. So went to Penn State after that, not ever thinking I'd have anything to do with wrestling, but got up on campus, and 40,000 students, I knew one. And I mean, I'm a shy introvert. I wasn't going to make friends just wandering around campus. So I got out the list of clubs and said, I better find some like-minded people to get to meet, and saw there was a wrestling club, not a competing club, but the club that was an extension of the Booster Club, and helped it duels, helped it fundraising events. And I said, that sounds good. I'll do it. Got involved in that. And then my sophomore year at Penn State, when we were talking about how do we get, and this is pre-Kale, so it's a totally different environment.
Right. Sunderland was a coach then?
Sunderland was a coach. And we didn't get much student participation at duels. I mean, just again, different. I mean, the still a knowledgeable fan base, a lot of great Penn State fans, but not a lot of students showed up. And they said, well, why don't you, Ross, start the club team back up? And we didn't have a club team registered. So I said, okay, I'll do it. And went to the head of club sports and said, hey, I want to start the wrestling club back up, the club team. And he said, sure. How about you make it co-ed? And I was like, I guess. I mean, I'll do it. So went all over campus, hanging up signs, joined the club team, got decent turnout. Basically was just open mat that first year. And, had, I think, two women join the team, probably about 30 other people, ranging from a couple people, that were newer to the sport or just wrestled a little bit in high school, up to, we had a guy that was going to walk on the next year, and a PhD student from Lithuania that wrestled Greco. So quite the range of, just people showing up and wrestling around. But it was a ton of work, trying to run a practice, answer emails, keep people involved. And I was like, do I really want to, is it worth it for me? Right. Because I'm
a lot of time, I'm sure. Right.
Yeah. And I'm just getting beat up at practice. Right. I mean, most people are much better than me. And I said, I'll do the intramural tournament that year. And it kind of, well, why would I not? I'm running the club, I should wrestle. And I pinned my guy in the first round in like 12 seconds. And I'm like, all right, I love it. I'm sticking with it, for the rest of my college career. And, had a lot of fun. Troy Sunderland was super supportive of the program. There was, just a great wrestling fan base, a lot of wrestling supporters at Penn State. Had a lot of fun. And then what I would say is my only big moment in wrestling was my senior year. I made the finals of the IM tournament. And again, I would just remember, like, would Coach Peck ever believe I was still on the mat without my high school season finished? And, I tell everyone, hey, because they'd make it like a duel. You get a wrestle center, rec hall for a guy that was, for someone that's a below average high school wrestler, you think, how am I getting to wrestle at rec hall? So I told everybody, hey, I'm going to be in the finals, show up, come to rec hall. And of course, I have someone in the finals that I know is better than me. I've wrestled him in club. He's better than me. My goal was I am in better shape than him.
Okay.
I'll just hand fight and hope he makes a mistake at some point and I can capitalize it. And within like 5 seconds, he takes me down. And I'm just like, I'm going to, it's good enough. I got to wrestle in rec hall. Do I really want to try? And just, am I happy enough to stay here? And again, kind of the wrestling things that carry over, right? Was I just going to settle and say, hey, second place is good enough? But I wanted that IM cube. I mean, this is, for the non-athlete at an athlete school like Penn State, the IM cube is very coveted item. So I end up second period, we're on our feet, hit him with a fireman's carry, take him right to his back, still hold a grudge that Adam Smith didn't call the fault, but held him there and then just stalled out the third period and got my cube. And then that was it. I said, I'm never competing again. I'm never stepping on the mat again. I don't know how this happened, but I'm done. And that was kind of, so I graduate, and because I was on the mat, because I was in the wrestling room and we kind of shared time, there was a youth program that would occasionally be on the mat with.
Okay.
And, I made friends with the coaches and a lot of the parents. And I said, I'd come back and help at summer camps. So for the next 4 or 5 years, I took a week off every year and went back and helped at summer camp and just kind of like being around the sport. But, I was living in DC at the time. It's not like I was that close to Penn State. Just sort of faded out over time. And I thought I'd just be, that's kind of the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then my wife and I found out we're having twins and twin boys. And I remember that when they were, we found out they were fraternal. And I think sometimes what wrestling parents may think when they have kids, they come out and they weigh them. Fraternal, first one's 6.3 ounces. Second one's 6.1 ounce. First thing, I think, great separate weight classes.
Yeah, right.
Different sizes.
That's good sized twins. Right?
Yeah. So my wife and I had an agreement that we wouldn't try to force our hobbies on our kids.
Right.
And, say, do you want to do this or this? And how do you get a kid to say yes to wrestling? And how do they even know about it? I would do our Target errands, and I'd say, well, there's a football, there's a basketball, there's a tennis racket in the sports section. Then you go in the clothing section, there's a Bear shirt, a Bull shirt, a Blackhawk shirt. How am I ever going to
get them,
introduce them to the sport without me,
make it look fun? How do you make it look fun, right?
Yeah, without manipulating it. So we're at Target and they're buying some Legos, and I see some paints as we go through that. I'm like, all right, I'm going to paint these like wrestlers, and that'll be how I'll introduce them to the sport. So that night, painted them up. And like when I look at those early ones, the painting is just awful. I think I had like one brush that was super thick.
But if you're not, if you're not embarrassed by your first piece, right, you've launched too late, right?
Yeah. So I paint them and, kind of reenact some of the scenes and from matches. And I'm like, maybe I should put these up on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of remember, like, am I actually going to take my Twitter off private and put it up there, knowing that, kind of all the range of comments you get on anything you post. And I went ahead and did it, and was a few likes from the Penn State loyalist, and
because it was a Lego figure with the Penn State singlet, right? Is that what it was?
Yeah. All the original ones were all Penn State for sure. And I said, well, I'll just keep doing this. And just started cranking through painting, and would just say, all right, I want to do all the gold medalists. I want to do all this. And I just kind of was cranking through painting Legos and loved it. It was just really, I mean, I got way more of it with kids. It definitely introduced them to the sport, but
Right. That's what I was going to ask. I'm sure you loved it more, but what the boys say? What they think of it?
yeah, they had, one of my sons, it definitely it introduced him to sport. He's super excited about, kind of the sport and getting into wrestling. The other one, not as competitive, not as much into sports. Probably,
That's as we talked, my daughters, the same thing. They're right around your boys' age, my twin daughters, and one's more active, like in the sports, and one's starting to, shy away from it a little bit, but that's all good, right?
yeah, yeah,
So you start with the Lego characters,
yeah.
right? And you're painting those. At what point didn't you make Rec Hall? Did you make Rec Hall, I
Did
believe?
make Rec Hall. Yeah,
Yeah.
I made Rec Hall, the Bonna Center, National Wrestling Hall of Fame. Those are probably the big three that I took the time to actually like correctly do
Piece by
the
piece.
yeah, yeah.
So that'd take some time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So at what point did you said you kind of, jumped in, you put it on Twitter. At what point did you start seeing, the following and you're like, man, I can do more with this, or, because what came next? Did the stickers come next then? Or what was kind of
No, I
the
start
evolution and inspiration, I guess?
yeah, so the evolution, I think really painting is somewhat labor intensive because I've got to make sure I've got the right paints and mixing paints, and then there's a lot of cleanup. So there's a lot of downtime that I'm not productively creating. And I was like, and Legos limited me a little bit.
Mhm.
I kind of have peaked out. I had sort of plateaued as far as where I could paint. I'd plateaued as far as I could do stop motion. So that's when I started to do a couple graphics, and I was like, all right, I think I can do more with graphics than I can with Lego. So I started to do graphics, and that was sort of the evolution from Lego to digital art.
Okay. Did you have a history of art? I mean, in high school and college, or just kind of just jumped in and
No, I think it's probably a little bit of. I think it's probably just a mix of DNA.
uh,
I had no background in art, but my father was a lot like Paul Lucas, super into the aesthetics of uniforms. He used to sketch the numbering typeface of different NFL teams. He could tell you, all the different typefaces. He
oh,
was
really?
super into that kind of stuff. And then my mother was a creator. There was one year where my sister couldn't find the right dress she wanted for homecoming, so my mom made it.
Oh,
And
wow.
maybe that has like a negative kind of view of your mom's making your clothes, but what stuck for me is like if you can create, you can get exactly what you want.
Right.
So I just think I have a little bit of my DNA that just comes probably a little naturally to me.
Wow. So then you start with the digital, right? And it's with the stickers, and then you created the club, right? The wrestling art
Yeah.
studio club, right? Was a
Yep.
monthly, people can subscribe, right? And
Hmm.
they can receive actually yesterday I received the thank you cards.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I received those in the mail yesterday, so thank you for the thank you cards. Um, so what was, I guess, because that launched, and we'll get into the NFTs and things like that later in the coaches graphics. But kind of what was at what point did you want? Okay, I'm going to create this club and keep putting out content and create a following.
Um, so what I think really a little bit of it was because a school sent me a cease and desist. I won't say who, but they sent me a cease and desist and said I could no longer do their athletes because I was profiting from it. And I called the school back and I emailed them, and I'm like, at this point in time, I wasn't selling anything.
Oh, right. I remember I reached out. Uh, it's probably close to 2 years ago now, at least a year and a half. I was like, "Hey, where can I buy these?" And you can just have the file. I got the what was it? Agile host the singlet one,
Yeah,
and what
yeah,
was the other? I got, and you sent the files, and yeah. So you're like, "No, you can have them." I was like, "You sure? I'll pay for them." You're like, "No, you can have the files." So, but go on.
yeah, yeah. So then when kind of got that cease and desist, and if anyone's sleuthing, you can probably see a school that I often ignore. But then I'm like, well, if they're going to consider that I'm actually making money, I thought, well, I'll sell some stickers, and just to cover my expenses.
Right, right.
Uh,
You're putting a lot of hours in at this point, and selling stickers for a couple bucks
yeah,
isn't
for
much in
sure.
your pocket for sure.
And then I have a subscription to Field Notes. They make, actually I have one right next to me where I keep all my to-dos. They just make small notepads. And I love that you don't know what you sign up for a year, you don't know what you're gonna get. And I thought, I should do that with wrestling art, where I'll just have the kind of the year-long subscription, and just kind of whatever kind of I come up with, I'll just send out for that month without having to worry too much about, kind of a set amount I'm going to buy, and not keeping
Right,
inventory, things like that. So I decided to do the subscription service.
right, right.
And yeah, it was kind of a stressful, like when I pushed out, it was a stressful day because I put it out, someone immediately signs up for a year, and then like 4 hours go by, nothing. And I'm like, oh, am I doing this now for a year for one person? What did I do? But yeah, now I'm closing in on 100 subscribers, which would be really cool if I hit 100. But I'm probably not going to commit to it anymore next year. I just kind of want to run this first one out,
Right.
and see how it goes. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I have a lot of stuff queued up for the coming months that I'm pretty excited about.
Right. So it's a subscription service for those that don't know. It is really inexpensive, right? What is it, like $40 and you get stickers or something like you mentioned every month for a year, correct? Is that what
Yep.
there's a 6-month option and a 12-month, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, I think I got it was a handful of stickers last month, and like, as mentioned, got the thank yous this month, and it's kind of got the wrestling singlet theme or wrestling. You can tell, okay, this is wrestling themed thank you card, so pretty cool. So, was there a certain point with that? Like you said you have one that signed up initially. At what point on whether it's on Twitter, right, or social media, or just through your inbox, was there a certain point like, well, okay, wow, there's some following here, people are enjoying my art? Was there a certain point, I'm sure you beat yourself up, you're your own worst critic, but at a certain point you're like, okay, maybe people are enjoying this?
It's probably actually before I actually started the actual sticker shop. I
Okay.
printed out the Agile Mobile Hostile. Like Sticker Mule had some crazy deal that you could get
Mm-hmm.
50 for like $20. So I just printed a bunch up and I put on Twitter, hey, DM me. You can have one for free.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you want to Venmo me the cost of shipping, you can send $1 to
Mm-hmm.
my Venmo, and just ping, 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 ping. And a lot of people were Venmoing $10, $20,
Oh, cool.
$25. And I'm like,
Okay.
all right, I guess people appreciate this. Thank you, everyone. It was kind of really humbling almost that people would do that to really kind of fund me then getting into, doing more sticker designs.
Right, right. If we had, so I end up having that printed like on a vinyl banner, and it's hanging in our club room. We have an offsite club room, and that's hanging in there. So all the kids don't really understand it, but the coaches that come in like, that's awesome, that's pretty cool. The kids don't understand what that is, but no, it's definitely. I was like, I gotta get this one printed. So, I guess then from the sticker subscription, kind of where to go from there? Was it kind of the digital art then from there? What was the next steps, or kind of what
Yeah,
was
then
the
I started.
thoughts?
Yeah, so I get a lot of pings, a lot of DMs, a lot of questions for, do you want to partner on t-shirt designs? Do you want to, and most of that I'll say no, or I'll say, I'll give you 2 designs. I'm not, really looking for a partnership. And then, a couple clubs, hey, can you help us with the logo? The things that tend to be a little more creative, I really enjoy, where it's, a little more blank slate, come up with something. These are our colors. So I do a lot of that. Now is how I spend a lot of my time. And then, I think that kind of then the NFT pings, just one after the other. You need to get into NFTs was sort of has been the next evolution of what I've focused on.
All right, and those just launched a few weeks ago. So
Yeah. It's really interesting journey.
you probably had to learn a lot, right? If you're not in that space, there's a lot to take in. So I guess Phil, the listeners, I'm curious too, what that was like, because it's a whole another, it's not just creating the artwork and mailing it out, right?
Yeah. So, I was initially very skeptical, right? Because just from doing what I've done for almost 5 years now, I know that there's a sort of there's a sharp supply and demand curve. If I say, hey, I can do, I'll do the graphic for free, 50 DMs, then there's a big change if I say $10. It's amazing how from 0 to 10 and then from 10 to 50 is another big jump. And I kind of know what people are willing to pay for digital art. Why would I ever think I'm going to be making millions in NFTs? Why is this going to be this life altering experience? I was super skeptical, but then it was just so many people, DM after DM after DM. You need to get into NFTs. You need to start to believe it. Right. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to do it. And I had talked to several people and I finally agreed on a partner and started creating the art for our launch. And then the partner backed out.
Oh, geez.
And kind of my thing was I was going to supply the art. Like we had agreed upon a theme and I was going to supply the art and he was going to do all the other stuff. So I never really needed to know anything. And then he backed out and I was like, well, I'm so close.
Right. Might as well finish, right?
Yeah. Do it myself. So, that's when I'm like, all right, now I got to pick my own platform. I got to figure out what platform, what blockchain, what crypto. I got to buy my own crypto, which I'd never done before. So there were just so many things I had to learn. And a little bit for me, it was, sort of, I said, skeptical, excited. Then when I was doing it myself and I kind of realized how challenging, because, okay, I opened my sticker shop. You just put your credit card on.
Right.
Boom, it's done. Now it's like, all right, now you've got to deal with crypto, right? You've got to convert to the right currency. You've got to buy the currency, get in the right. It's not that easy for someone that doesn't want to own crypto, that doesn't really know what NFT is.
So you weren't familiar with crypto or Web
not at all
3.0 or anything? So you were learning as a creator, not as a consumer, right?
Right. And I had a hard deadline. I don't know why I thought this would be symbolic, but I wanted to launch on Novogratz's birthday.
Oh, really? Thought, nice.
Yeah. You think crypto and wrestling, you think Novogratz. So I'm like, and I saw him post like 10 days before his birthday. And I'm like, all right, that's the go date. And it's just rushing to get everything up and running and really trying to decide of what was my theme going to be for NFTs. Was I just going to try to do art? Was I going to try to do a collection? Or was I going to try to do, some other unlockable content? And, I didn't want to do the unlockable content because I was already committed to the subscription service. And I just didn't want to take on something else that was going to stretch over a period of time. So I went with the Crypto Wrestling Club collection, season 1, and launched it the 26th.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what was her? Was it 200 pieces or what?
200. I originally I was going to do 100 at first, and was showing it to my wife, and I said, "There's not enough female in this. You need to do some more female wrestlers." So I'm like, "All right, I'll split it 50-50. I'll do 200, 100. First 100 are all men. Next 100 are all women." And worked around the clock for like 3 days to get everything up to add in the next, kind of fill out the 200.
And I'll put in the show notes, but they're out there for those that are familiar with NFTs and cryptos. It's through OpenSea, correct?
Correct. Yep, it's on OpenSea. Yeah.
Yep. So I'll put that in show notes. So that's season 1. Anything you can share regarding season 2 or what?
I mean, I'm still working on it. I think it'll be so. Season 1 is all generic. Season 2 is likely not going to be generic. I mean, there's a lot of. I mean, the whole reason. When you're dealing with crypto, it's just another layer of complexity. So it's, how am I going, if I'm going to use an NIL, if I'm going to use, something more specific, there's just another layer of determining how we're going to fairly make that work. So season 2 will be a little more recognizable for exactly who the Crypto Wrestling Club member is.
That's pretty cool. No, when you launched that, I was following along, obviously, and and you're even kind of educating the wrestling world on what NFTs are. Do you feel that you're one of the first to launch into the NFT wrestling realm, that you kind of, it's not on your shoulders, but a way you kind of educate, wrestlers are kind of, new to things, or.
Yeah. I mean, I think Rockfin has done a great job with sort of introducing the concept of crypto and all that goodness. I remember, someone complaining about buying Ray tokens and how many fees there were like 2 years ago, or maybe a year ago, I don't know. And Martin being like, hey, that's the price of learning. And I felt the same thing like a month ago when I was like, well, I just got hammered with fees. So I think, Rockfin's done a great job of, a lot of the education, from as far as, but I think from NFTs, I'm not aware of too much else wrestling focused. I mean, I know there's a lot of people on the cusp just based on those who have reached out to me to partner on things, but I do think it is definitely an education, just based on the questions, the DMs I got, everything from what's an NFT to, very specific questions around what's your plan for getting your floor price up.
Or even people think they just log into OpenSea and put their credit card, right?
Right.
MetaMask or the wallets. They're not, there's a lot of layers to it, right?
For sure.
It's a good thing. No, it's exciting time for creators, a creator such as yourself. So it's pretty cool to see you pump out that content, because you've been pumping out a lot, which is awesome, right? One of my favorites is the wrestling coaches that you launched, that you put out there. Do you have a favorite piece, or do you want to talk about that?
I sort of always have goals, like when I'll reach certain things. Mm-hmm. And kind of my first goal, and, I talked about the very first time someone interviewed me about my work, I said, I will feel I have accomplished something when Coach Sanderson follows me, which that box has now been checked when he did his resurgence on social media. So now the next one is, if you look at his profile photo on Twitter, it's like off-centered and everything. So my goal has been to try to do something to get Kale to change it. Coach Sanderson to change it. So I had this idea of this minimalistic logo and how I would do it. And I did the Kale one first, and it was one of those ones where I just finished it. I was like, oh, this is perfect, and I put it up. And then, I said, okay, well, let me do some of the, then you get a bunch of, every time I put something, you get a bunch of these coaches. So, I did.
You kind of know, right, that once I publish this, my inbox or my DM, right?
So I did a couple more, and I did, a lot of the coaches that'll interact with me, a lot of the ones I do are, obviously a lot of fan bases. So Coach Papalizio, Coach Elliott, the kind of those first couple of batches.
Coach Elliott's the man. He's the man.
Yeah. And then I was like, well, I'll do them all. I'll do all the D1 coaches, and did that. And one of the things that I made a couple comments about it, but I always, when I get the DMs, if I see a coach's wife, that coach goes right to the top of the queue for the next one I make. It's there's just some really supportive coaches' wives out there that I enjoy interacting with, and making art for their husbands' teams.
Yeah, you're definitely right. Flashback 20 years ago or so, you never hear, I guess, obviously it's easy with social media, but you wouldn't even know the name of the wives. Now it's like you're following them because you want their take on certain things. So it definitely creates some excitement around the sport. So something like that, it has to take some time, right? To pump out all D1 coaches.
Yeah, it did. So, it's a lot of late night, it's when I'll do this late at night. I mean, I can, depending on if, and I put a YouTube video on how I do it. I mean, I can do if I have a straight on picture of the coach,
right,
that has I can do one in 15 minutes now. But I tell everyone, and for those who request art from me, and I think I even put a graph out of it, sort of the way that my quality goes or the way it works, it's like I start a new project. And like the first ones, I'm kind of learning the technique or the way I want to do it. So they're not that great. And then there's sort of like, okay, now I'm excited about turning this into a project and I'm getting better at the technique. And then when I convert it to a full-blown project, or I'm doing 78 or whatever the number is, then it's like, all right, at some point in time, I just want to get it done.
Right.
and I'm rushing. So you kind of want to time your ass to get into my queue when I'm on the upswing. You don't want to be one of the last ones, and you don't want to be one of the first ones either. But that was a lot of work to do the 78.
So you mentioned you had the goals of Kale following you. Now the next is his profile photo, right?
Yeah.
Fixing that. So any other goals do you have with your artwork?
That's about it. I've been working with National Wrestling Hall of Fame for a while on some work there. We did a goal sheet last year that I helped them with. At some point in time, just to get my art in there. I know they want to do we've been talking about a Lego display.
Oh, cool.
Just, more to say. Have them in the Hall
I got to give a shout out right now talking about Lego display. My nephew made this. I'll show you.
All right. Awesome.
I give a shout out to my nephew. He made that for the show. So, but go on. So you work with the Hall of Fame. You working with Miss Roper?
I did some stickers with the Dan Gable Museum, the one in Stillwater.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Okay.
With Jack, on there, and that's one of the ones I built the building of. So I mean that's probably the next one. I mean, it's not the Dayton Art Institute, which I would have said was kind of the first place I think of is an art museum growing up. But
oh, that's awesome. So anything else that you want to share about your work or your story that we didn't touch on? I think we covered a lot here, and I was anxious to hear your story. I think I reached out about a year ago, and you're like, no, I don't want to get on, and my story's not that interesting. I was like, there's people out there, there's artists, that enjoy your work that want to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, probably the two things that I try to stick by sort of my own is not to care about what people say for the most part, which again, there's some wild comments sometimes on things you post. And I just try to keep it, mostly positive. There's some, I think sometimes you can be a little more edgy and get a little more attention. That's, not particularly my style. I just try to mostly do positive things, and just kind of keep at it.
Nice. So for the listeners, right, you're mainly on Twitter and Instagram, right? Wrestle Chicago, is that the handle?
Yep. Yeah. Okay. And I mean, I try to answer my DMs. There's a lot better chance you'll get a response if you are polite and actually follow me versus aggressively asking for free design work from someone that's never interacted with me before.
And the links to the Wrestling Art Studio are within your profile.
Yeah, there's a link tree in both my bios. That'll take you to everything. That I have.
And then
out there.
Crypto Wrestling Club on OpenSea, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it, Ross. Thanks for your time today. Awesome chatting and sharing some your stories and sharing it with the community. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, really, really appreciate you having me on.